Okay, you can begin.
Okay, so hi everyone. Welcome to our presentation, Exploring Leadership. This is presentation one, Understanding Self. In our group is Sophia Mohammed, Kelsey Kotoy, and me, Camille McLean. As a result of our emergency with Miss Sophia Mohammed, I'll be presenting her part in her stead. So to begin, as an introduction and a chapter overview. This chapter overview challenges you to think of the things about yourself that shape your personality, personal identity, and fuels your motivation. It even helps you to discover the things that affects you how you lead. It explores the role of self-concept and self-esteem. It also explores how you, as an individual, form your values, the role of your values in developing your character. Your personality preferences for how you approach decisions and how you learn are also addressed. Along with studying leadership, you must also understand yourself. So to begin, let's consider a couple scenarios. Imagine that the times you have been sitting in class or a meeting and you had thoughts like these. I have a solution to this problem, but I don't want to say it out loud in front of all these people because what if I sound stupid? Or I am so proud I didn't hesitate 1 minute to disagree with the hurtful things that were said. Or my sense of humor really helped the group to get through that tense moment and keep things in perspective. Have you ever dealt with any of those situations? Well, how does someone come to the conclusions just mentioned? Seeing your own strengths and weaknesses and those of others requires focused reflection. Being aware of how you prefer to think, relate, learn, find personal meaning is an important self awareness skill. Being able to articulate what you value helps you to understand your own motivations and behaviors. Knowing your strengths and weaknesses help you to grow and relate to others with authenticity and credibility. Let's consider the first point, developing of self for leadership. The common observation of many acknowledged leaders is that no one can teach you about yourself except for you. Counselors, advisors, friends, or family can help you with this process, but awareness ultimately requires you to study yourself. Observe four ways from which you can develop self knowledge. One, you are your own best teacher. Two, you can accept responsibility and don't blame people when there's a mistake if you realize you have a big part to play in it. You can learn anything you want to learn. And true understanding comes from reflection on your experiences, strengths, and weaknesses. Each person brings a different mix of strengths and weaknesses to any situation. The irony is that some of your strengths, if overemphasized, become weaknesses. Let me give an example. You may be a strong critical thinker who can readily find flaws in any logic. But if overemphasized, can this make you hard to work with? Or could it make it difficult for other people to work with you because all you see is the flaws? Being a strong critical thinker can be a terrific strength in helping your peers prepare and present in a position, its position on a topic. Or it can be seen as a negative if someone is presenting an idea to you and you naturally begin to be critical instead of trying to connect and listen to the person. People could always tell when you're actually listening to them. The converse can be true as well. To be humble and quiet may mean that you may feel like your opinion is never really heard and that your voice is left out of the decision making process. But it can also mean that you're a keen listener who is very in tune to the thoughts of others. Leadership self awareness grows when you can typically identify your strengths and weaknesses in working with others towards change. So let's see how we can identify passions and strengths. Clifton, who's referenced in the book that we are discussing, suggests that you may pay attention to the things you see others doing and to your inner mind. Clifton and Nelson recommend that you find your strengths by trying these strategies. First, listen to yourself when you have done something well, even if no one else notices it. We always notice when we do something well, so we take note of that. Secondly, we identify the satisfaction we feel when you know something you did was terrific and gives you a feeling of well-being. And thirdly, knowing what things you find easy to learn quickly. For example, organizing your lab reports or talking to strangers or mastering a computer technology and reading patiently to small children. One of the greatest strengths as human beings is talent. Everyone has talent. Knowing yourself well includes knowing your talents, the things that you are naturally good at. Unfortunately, we often work from a deficit model, focusing and maybe even obsessing about our weaknesses. Trying to fix our weaknesses takes away from our ability to lead and work from our strengths, talents, and strengths. We do not have enough time in our lifespan to fix all our weaknesses or try to transform our weaknesses into strengths while also trying to work from our natural talents. When you pay attention to your strengths, you're working from the philosophy of talent. And this comes from the reference of Buckingham and Clifton, who propose two assumptions that can guide you in leadership. One, each person's talents are enjoying and unique. And two, each person's greatest room for growth is in the areas of his or her greatest strength. So let's see. What can we do to manage our weaknesses? All of us can learn to manage our weaknesses. Some think that weaknesses can be removed, but they cannot be transformed into strengths. The goal, therefore, is to manage weaknesses so that strengths can be freed to develop and become so powerful that they make the weaknesses irrelevant. And this is actually in reference to Clifton and Nelson. A person can either manage their weakness so that they do not repress other strengths or overcome them and turn them into strengths. So take a look at our images. I'm sure the class recognizes these people because they are popular movie stars. Keanu Reeves, Whoopi Goldberg, Orlando Bloom, and of course Tom Cruise. What do these people have in common? Well, each of them has dyslexia, which we would consider weaknesses. But when you see them, do you focus on those weaknesses? They may struggle to be quick readers or articulate accurate spellers, but all learn to manage those weaknesses and find ways to prevent them from blocking their strengths. Others cope with different weaknesses. Helen Geller could not see, hear, nor speak, but she learned to communicate remarkably well. Olympic athlete Jackie Joyner Kersey deals daily with asthma. Whatever their weaknesses, all these gifted people learn to manage weaknesses so that it did not hold back their strengths. We encourage you to focus on your strengths and develop your talent. Some weaknesses, however, may be problematic because they cause you to function poorly. These need to be tackled directly. For example, you may not speak well in front of a group like we all have to do in this class. But you can, however, manage this weakness by learning ways to make a presentation more comfortable for you, like using overhead transparencies or handouts or encouraging the group interaction. In my case, I find it easier to present because if I control the presentation myself instead of giving it to my partner, as an example. So, esteem and confidence. How you think about yourself. How you think and feel about yourself is the energy that fuels your motivation. Self-concept is how we objectively describe ourselves. Usually, it's based on our roles and attributes. You might say, I'm a mother of a 2-year-old and like to go with the flow, keeping all my options open. Or I am an older than typical student with above average intelligence and highly motivated. Or I'm a creative person with musical abilities. Self esteem is the subjective element of how you feel about yourself. For example, you might say, I'm a creative person with musical abilities, but unskilled socially and uncomfortable around those in authority. I feel proud of my musical and creative skills, but disappointed in myself for not being more socially skilled. Self awareness would lead to having an accurate self conception, honoring your strengths and addressing your weaknesses. Essential first steps towards high self esteem. Self confidence is the ability to know that you can rely on your strengths and competencies and skills in many contexts in which you find yourself. Some people consistently do well in whatever they do, but they are never sure they can do well and therefore have low self confidence. Perhaps self confident people have better memories and know that they have done well before and can do so again. Accepting ourselves is perhaps one of the hardest life's tasks. Realizing that you cannot change some things about yourself is a step towards higher self esteem. For example, you will not become 6 foot 2 if you are now 5 foot 6. You will not become another race, change your siblings, or get rid of your freckles. You can, however, learn new skills and add to your knowledge base. So focus on what you can change. I now invite my colleague, Kelsey Katoy, to give the second part of this presentation.
Thank you, Camille. Um, there's just one point that she made, and you know, it had me laughing, because in my life, I'm a musician, and I've played for the custard band, in graduation, and every Sunday I play in church as well, in front of like 800. Um, in graduation, I play in front of like 2,000 or even 5,000, and I find it so comical that anytime I have to do exam and I'm playing in front of just three, um um you could say judges, or three lecturers, because they have the power, the pen, to mark you, and it's like that fear and anxiety would just like take over, so as she said, people in at authority, I was like, wow, it's so true. So let me share my screen to continue. I think this is it. Yes. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes, we're
Yes,
seeing
we
your
are.
screen.
Okay, great. So good day, everyone. My name is Kelsey Katoy, and I'll be continuing on esteem and confidence. John Gardner story of Martin Luther King emphasized on the need to first teach people to believe in themselves. Self concept is how we objectively describe ourselves based on our role and attributes. An example of this would be I am a mother, I have a child, or I am a creative person with musical abilities. Self esteem is how we feel about ourselves, which is linked to self awareness. Identifying strengths and weaknesses and acknowledging personal growth and progress is how self esteem is built. Having high self esteem comes from valuing ourselves and your achievements, such as academics and leadership roles, whilst low self esteem arises from expectations not aligning with reality. Self confidence is knowing you can rely on your strengths, competencies, and skills. The challenge with this is that some do well but lack confidence in their abilities. But self confident people remember past successes and build on them. Self acceptance. Accepting ourselves is one of the hardest tasks in life, especially when realizing that you cannot change certain things about you or yourself. However, accepting unchangeable traits such as your race and your height is difficult, but realizing what can and cannot be changed is the key part to improving self esteem. Cognitive reframing is a strategy to perceive weaknesses into strengths. An example of this is shyness, reframed as thoughtfulness and reflection, just as Bette Milder shared, where she reflected on how her uniqueness, once seen as a disadvantage, later became an asset in her life. Understanding yourself. When understanding oneself, there are key questions to be asked, such as what shapes your perception, values, personality, and motives? Is it nurture or nature? Meaning, meaning, was it an influence of heredity versus socialization? Awareness of these help in understanding yourself. Examples of influence: physical traits impacting perception. Being tall or big m- might make others assume you're outgoing or aggressive or even shy. Being smaller may lead others to focus on the qualities of your words. Learn traits. Your environment can shape traits like being relational, thoughtful, or anxious. So these are some of the the I would say pillars or problems that could hinder us from self-esteem. So we have confusion, abuse, trauma, and hopelessness. Intentional development, unchangeable traits. As mentioned earlier, some traits like height are genetic and cannot be changed. Changeable traits. Traits learned from your environment can be brought to into awareness and be addressed. Authenticity. You can't control others' perception, but you can strive to be true to yourself. Individuality and self awareness. Self awareness is a psychological study of individuality. Some feel uncomfortable with categorizing behavior. This caused some cultural differences. Some cultural view focusing on oneself as selfish. Personal insight and behavior. An opportunity for insight is exploring ways scholars understand behavior that provides personal insight. An example of this is the grief process, as explained by Kubler-Ross. The stages of grief are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Factors that shape your identity. Central characteristics. Ethnic, racial, or cultural backgrounds significantly shape who you are. Gender influences beliefs and behaviors. Sexual orientation impacts attitude and actions. Age and abilities. Age influence interests and views change with age. Abilities and disabilities can shape your perceptions and skills, influencing identity development. Family influence. Birth order, which is the position in the family, is said to affect your development. Roles and responsibilities. Being a child, parent, or professional can shape decision making. Spirituality and socioeconomic status. Spirituality and religion guides your worldview and thinking. Socioeconomic status influences development and perspectives on leadership. Personal context and identity. Diverse influences, gender, age, culture, religion, and socio-economic factors contribute to identity. Mapping personal context influences development and perspectives on leadership. Moving to leadership potential, leadership capacity. According to As and Tamarkin, leadership is within everyone, shaped by individual experiences. Making a difference. Whether leading or participating, everyone has the ability to influence and change and create change. Values, beliefs, ethics, and character. Values and beliefs. Values guide actions and are shaped by beliefs. Understanding and articulating your values help clarify your thoughts and actions. Personal preferences influence how value systems are constructed, which are logical, emotional, scientific, and intuitive. Value system preferences. Some people value logic and scientific reasoning, like Mr. Spock from Star Trek. I believe that um, he was more, um, to have that logic and reasoning, because because others might think that having a more emotional um aspect, would have a great outcome. But I guess um great leaders are built on value, um logic and scientific reasoning, in my belief. So others rely on emotion, intuition, or concrete experiences. Universal values. Some values such as promising Some values, such as promise keeping and nonviolence, are universal across most societies, according to Buck. These fundamental values help in understanding others and achieving shared purposes. So, continuing, ethical dilemmas and value conflicts. Disagreement may arise from value conflicts, but integrity plays a key role in essential decision making. An example is the story of student government, where different perspectives on integrity and trust lead to contrasting reactions. Integrity and trust. When someone is known for their integrity, their decisions are more likely to be trusted even in the face of disagreement. Integrity can also reflect in standing by one's values, even when it leads to personal decisions like leaving an organization. Character and ethical behavior. Integrity in relationships. Integrity is crucial for fostering trust and working together towards meaningful change. Authenticity is acting in ways that are true and real, both personally and in the world. Leadership and character. General Norman emphasized character, integrity, ethics, and morality over mere competence in leadership. Selfless leadership prioritizes serving a cause over personal gain. Universal values. Trust is earned through honesty and consistency. Trustworthiness fosters meaningful relationships and strengthens leadership credibility. So we have 6 pillars of character by Josephson Institute of Ethics. Number 1, trustworthiness. More than honesty, it includes integrity and keeping promises. Number 2, respect. Treat others without demeaning and exploiting them. Number 3, responsibility. Be accountable for actions and be aware of moral and ethical consequences. Number 4, fairness. Ensure equitable outcomes and challenge personal biases. Number 5, show concern for others, well being through empathy and kindness. And lastly, citizenship. Fulfill community responsibilities, including obeying laws and contributing to societal well being. Example of ethical behavior. A student returned $120 after a ticket sale mistake. Thereafter, the office accountant clerk asks her why didn't you keep the money? No one would have known. The student then replied, stating, but I would have known, and I don't do things like that. This demonstrates integrity, accountability, and adherence to personal ethics. So, in closing this section, we covered essential aspects of self awareness, values, and ethical leadership. They explore how personal identity is shaped by factors like values, beliefs, and experiences, and emphasize on the importance of integrity, trust, and character in building meaningful relationships and effective leadership. The message is the idea that ethical decision making and self awareness are crucial for personal growth and fostering positive change in communities. So I thank you for listening, and I will now pass you back to my colleague. Uh, I will now pass you back to my colleague so that she could close off. So I'm Camille.
Hi, I'm here. So
Okay.
allow me to share. You have to stop sharing.
Yeah. Okay, the floor is yours.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I am back, Camille, and this is what's originally supposed to be my path. Um, I will be closing off by discussing exploring leadership and personal growth. So, personal identity and leadership. The key point of this is that your leadership style is actually influenced by your identity, and your identity shapes how you lead. So, the more you understand about yourself, the better you can lead others. Carl Jung, who's referenced in the publication that we're discussing, identified four core functions of human adaptation that he called personality archetypes or temperament types. These four functions include terms we may or may not be familiar with, for instance, extroverted and introverted. There are differences between those who are oriented to the outer world, extroverts, and there's those who prefer their own inner worlds, introverts. Also, sensing and intuiting people. When we gather information, intuiting people like to project into the future, living in anticipation of how things can be better or improved or changed. While sensing people might say, what if it's not broke? Why fix it? Thinking or feeling people. The third core function is the mode of judging. Those who prefer thinking use logic and rationality. Feeling type people prefer to make judgments that account for relationships and importance of human values and beliefs, with emphasis on personal friendships, judging or perceiving. The fourth core function involves how you prefer to make decisions. Those with judging preferences prefer order and emphasis, resolving issues and making decisions to create order. Whereas perceiving type people prefer to keep things open ended by gathering as much information as possible and being flexible. We each have our own developed preferences of how most comfortably we perceive and judge our worlds. We can and do use all eight of these processes in some way or the other, but we might generally prefer a consistent pattern. If you're an introvert, you can enjoy people and good conversations, but you must have that time and that space to kind of have that quiet time, a bit of isolation. If you're extroverted, you certainly can be the type of person who also likes to listen and reflect, but you enjoy and prefer the energy of others. So let's look at some of the type indicator or cue words that could identify these archetypes that we just discussed. And maybe we could have a little class participation. Although I must say that I am not able to see if you put up your hand, so perhaps I can ask Kelsey to tell me how many people raise their hand for each type. So extroverts tend to be more sociable, interaction, external, multiplicity of relationships, expenditure of energies. They're interested in external events. Whereas introverts are territorial. They like concentration. They're internal. Um, they have limited relationships. They focus on conserving their energies. They're interested in internal reactions. So by a raise of hands, how much extroverts we have in the class? Perhaps Kelsey could tell me.
I'm seeing one hand.
Okay.
Okay, we have two.
Two. So we have two
Yeah, two.
extroverts in the whole class. How many introverts? Now I will put up my hand, although you're not seeing my hand up. My two hands up. How many introverts in the class?
We have five so far. Six. So it seemed that we have more um, introverts.
Yes, those are my people. So let's move on to sensing and intuiting. Some keywords that define them. So sensing people, they go on experience, the past, realistic. They tend to be actual, down to earth, fact. They go on fact. They're very practical and they're sensible. Whereas intuiting people tend to go on hunches. They focus on the future. They're speculative. They focus on the possibilities. They tend to be more head in the clouds. They look at fiction. They rely on ingenuity. They're more imaginative. So how many sensing people do we have in the class?
I'm seeing 2 so far.
All right.
3, 4. Okay, so we have 4. 5.
5.
Okay.
5 sensing people in the
Yes.
class.
Yes, 5.
What about intuiting people?
1 thus far. 2. 3. Okay. 3.
3. I must admit,
Yes.
I'm more sensing. I'm more sensing than I am intuiting, but I do have some intuiting tendencies. Right? So let's move on to thinking and feeling. Some keywords that define a thinking person. They're very objective. They go on principles, policies, laws. They are very firm. They're impersonal. It's justice, standards, and analysis. Those are some of the keywords that define thinking people. Feeling people tend to be more subjective. They go on values, social values, they consider extenuating circumstances, persuasion, personal, humane, good and bad, good or bad, sympathy. So how many thinking people do we have in the class?
Okay, so far it's 2, 4. Okay, so it's 4.
Oh, how many
Yes.
feeling people? My hand is up for the feeling people.
We have 5 so far. 6. So that's good.
All right, 7 people then, because it's me included. All right, so let's consider some keywords that define judging and perceiving people. So judging people tend to be more settled, decided, fixed. They plan ahead, they run their life very well. They're very planning, they're decisive, they want to wrap it up, they move with urgency, they're with deadlines. Whereas perceiving people tend to be more pending. They gather information, they're flexible, they adapt as they go, they go by a let life happen kind of mindset. They're open ended. They tend to be tentative about a lot of things. Or they tend to say, well, something will turn up, or there's plenty of time, or what deadline? So let's do another question. How many judging people do we have in the class?
There's just 2 hands up.
All right.
3.
And how many? 3.
Okay, 4.
What about
Yes.
perceiving people?
I'm just seeing 2 hands.
Okay. So I must admit, I'm more judging than perceiving. I can't let life happen just so. And saying, well, something will turn up. I can't. My anxiety wouldn't allow for it. But I do have some perceiving tendencies. So how is this information even useful? Why are we discussing it? Let's see how each type shows leadership. This theory of psychological type has been widely used in leadership assessment to understand not only ourselves but others and the dynamics of relationships and leadership processes, but it's not without its flaws. There are some indication that the type is not stable, that you can change your pattern over time. So for instance, the action-oriented extrovert can become more contemplated and reflective introvert later on in life. And I must admit that that has been my experience. When I was younger, I was very outgoing, wanting to be in everything with everyone. But as I am older, I am definitely an introvert now. I prefer to be inside. So the concept of personality preferences is helpful in understanding ourselves as well as the framework for own self-exploration. Becoming aware of our personality preferences helps move you to a future towards self-awareness. As awareness grows, you begin to see the need to build other skills and have a wider range of responses in decision making and in your relationships with others. So what about approaches to learning? Sorry. Right, sorry. Good. We're continuing to discuss how this information can be useful. A useful application can be when you realize that this conflict you have with another person may be as a result of clash of preferences. So perhaps somebody may be extroverted while you are introverted, which, sometimes if you don't understand the other person or you don't understand yourself, it could lead to problems. So when you understand that there are different preferences, it could lead to more understanding ways of relating to the other person. This not only helps you with yourself, but it helps you with dealing with others as well. So you may then find it easier to say, well, I'm sorry. It seems like I'm jumping the gun, but I just do like to do my own thinking out loud. You could be able to explain that to the person because you understand who you are and who they are. Or you might say, I know I'm asking a lot of detailed questions, but it helps me to understand the bigger picture. And that's me right there. Or you might be able to say, well, these are very interesting ideas presented today. I am just not ready to decide yet. I need more time to think about this overnight, and maybe we could decide at the meeting tomorrow. That is way better, a way better way of dealing with it than what are you talking about, or I don't understand, or you just start to block because you don't understand each other. And I'm sure you would agree that if approached from these angles, we can understand our colleagues better, and have better work relationships. We can even find more effective ways to lead other people if we are being put in that situation. So approaches to learning. What about how that affects the way we learn? So leadership is about getting things done and making changes, understanding why change is needed and how well people and teams adjust to it is something we need to learn over time. So for extroverts, if you're extroverted, you are likely to enjoy group learning and tasks and projects and learn readily from group discussions and think aloud as you respond to questions and comments in the group. Extroverts value experience and they often leap into academic tasks with little planning. They prefer trial and error process because it allows them to think while they are active. Now, this comes from a reference, Jensen. Would you agree with what he says? What about introverts? If you're introverted, you listen keenly and you find you carry on a great dialogue in your head. You might prefer to keep a journal, or you probably do well with written assignments when there is time to reflect. When something important comes up, you prefer to think about it first and not jump into hasty conclusions. Another confirmation that I am indeed an introvert. Approaches to learning, sensing people. If you're a sensing learner, you like details and facts and might prefer inductive thinking. You value history and background of an issue in order to establish context to learn about it some more. Intuitive people. If you're an intuitive learner, you focus on the big picture rather than the smaller details. You might quickly form conclusions without needing a lot of information. You enjoy thinking about possibilities and gathering information from various sources. The way you process information can be deductive or inductive. Deductive thinkers thinking means that you prefer to understand the big picture first so that you can know the overall outcome and then you are comfortable breaking it down to smaller parts. Approaches to learning. The way you prefer to learn, whether through sensing or intuiting, can relate to how you process information, either deductively or inductively. Deductive thinkers prefer to see the big picture first and understand the overall outcome before focusing on the little details. They like to know where things are headed, much like seeing the whole forest before looking at the little individual trees. Whereas inductive thinker, which I am, I realize that from considering this lesson, On the other hand, they prefer to gather all the little details first and slowly build up to the big picture. They like to study each tree before stepping back to see the whole forest. So in a learning setting, a deductive learner might get frustrated with the inductive learner and say something like, where are you really going with this? Can we just get to the point, please? But if they understand differences in each other, it'll help them to work with each other. And then they might be able to say instead, it would help me to know where you're heading with this so I can follow along. So are you beginning to see how understanding yourself and others is important when working with your colleagues and even leading others? In groups, certain learning styles can be more common. For example, in a major organization, might attract students with similar preferences. If your learning style doesn't match the groups, you might feel like your ideas are being overlooked or your suggestions are being rejected. That is not a nice feeling. However, diverse groups benefit from different learning approaches, making the outcome richer. Highly diverse groups of learners can acknowledge that people learn in different ways and provide options to suit everyone. Using just one approach would work for only one part of the group. And that's why it's important to know your own learning style and appreciate how others might learn differently. So if during this presentation you realize that you're a particular type of learner, that doesn't mean you can't understand a different kind of learner. So the fact that we considered all this information means that you can identify your own learning style, but then you can also understand how to relate to someone with a different learning style. And in leadership, understanding how we take in information, relate to others, make decisions, and learn is very crucial. Exploring these preferences can help you to understand not just your personality, but how you can work with others. So in conclusion, the chapter summary. In conclusion, this chapter has highlighted the significance of self-awareness in both personal and leadership contexts. By examining our strengths and weaknesses, we can cultivate our talents and develop our realistic self-concept that fosters healthy self-esteem and confidence. And who would like more self-esteem and confidence? We also explored fundamental values that define a person's character, reinforcing the importance of integrity in leadership. Through various psychological and educational models, we assessed our personality and learning preferences, equipping ourselves with tools to better understand how we react with others and lead effectively. Ultimately, embracing these insights will empower all of us in this class to become more effective participants and leaders capable of inspiring and guiding those around us. I really hope that this information helps my classmates to become better leaders, better teammates, better colleagues, and not just that, but to understand themselves and how they can learn better and lead others. So thank you. This has been our presentation, Understanding Self, group number.
So, Camille, I just have one thing or one example to share with the class of being um, is it deductive? Um, it have it have instances where you will see like a car crash, and well, for me, I would first look at is everyone okay? And as long as I see everyone, like out of the car and then start arguing and so on, I would say, okay, good. I would start to walk, because I don't really focus on if the car feeling pain, you know. So while others may circle around the car and be like, oh my God, like how the car so mashed up or caved in, or I would I would first say, what, is everyone okay? And then once I see everyone come out the car and start to argue and stuff, I would be like, okay, good. You know, I would say case closed. So that's just so that I'm more deductive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. So anybody in the class have any questions? based on what we presented? Nice. I mean, we do a good job. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you,
I also
everybody.
praise
That's
God
been
for
our
that.
presentation.